Hello everyone, welcome to Math with Cam. In today's video, we're going to be talking about domain and range. We'll go over what the definition of domain and range is, and then we'll also talk about what a function is because they relate very well with each other. And then after, we'll go over a couple problems in terms of determining how to find the domain and range when you're given a graph. So if you could do me a favor, if you can like this video and subscribe to the channel, it would greatly help me out. So do that first, and then we'll get started with the video. To start off with domain, you want to be thinking about all of your x values, specifically those in a function. So domain is just all of the possible x values in a function. Another way we can think about the domain is it contains all of our inputs. And if that doesn't make sense right now, don't worry, we're going to explain that more when we get into a function. For range, it's very similar to what a domain is, but instead of all of your x values, you're dealing with your y values. All possible y values in a function. Similarly with domain, we thought about domain, or you could think about domain as inputs. Range, you can think about it also as outputs. Maybe you can kind of see a connection already just by those two different ways of thinking about domain and range. But let's talk about now then what a function is, just so we can tie it together. A function is just saying it's a mapping for all of your inputs to the outputs, and it has a special characteristic. That characteristic is saying for every input that's mapped to the output, it has a unique output. And let me just clarify a few things about this. So first of all, when I mean unique, I'm saying that every input has exactly one output. So this means that for every input, it's not going to be mapped to two different outputs. It's only going to go specifically to one. So multiple inputs could be mapped to the same output, but really it's just saying that every input only goes to one. It doesn't go to two or more. Now that we have defined these terms, let's get started and actually do some problems. So we're going to have two problems here. And for both of them, we're going to state the domain and range for each graph given. So taking a look at our graph, we can see that it's on a coordinate plane dealing with an x-axis and a y-axis. So that's going to kind of help with domain and range, heads up. And we also see that our graph that's given is a straight line. But with this straight line, we have a closed and open circle. So let's talk about that real quick. Whenever you're given a closed circle, that means you are including that point specifically. So closed circle means you include. And if you can guess, an open circle means you don't include. So why would we even have an open circle if we can't include it? It just means that we can get really close to that point, but we'll actually never touch it. So we can get really close. I don't know if the camera can see how close that is, but it's not touching. It will never touch, so heads up there. So starting with the domain here, remember you want to be thinking about x values. So domain is all the x values. I'll write a little x next to it to remind us. And starting at the left, we could see that this point, this closed circle, starts at the x value of -2. And if we keep going along the line, we can see that it actually stops at the open circle, which has the x value of 4. We're going to write our domain in interval notation. That means we're going to start at 2, -2 specifically, heads up. And then we're going to go all the way to 4. So we're going to have the comma saying, yeah, we'll include everything in between that. But if you remember what interval notation is, we need to include those parentheses and brackets. So when do we use that again? Well, it actually relates a lot to when we have our closed circles and our open circles. So for a closed circle, we want to include that point. That means we are going to use brackets. And if we aren't going to include that value, then we will use parentheses. So closed circles get the brackets, and open circles get the parentheses. If we look at the point where the x value of -2 starts, it's a closed circle. So that means we want to include that x value of -2, which means brackets. But at 4, we see that that x value is on the open circle. So we will use parentheses. And that's it. That's your domain. If you're thinking, oh, can I go backwards? Can I have started at 4 and then go to -2? It's conventional to say that we'll start at -2 and then go to 4, meaning always think least to greatest. So in this case, a big thing you want to think about is left to right. Or again, least to greatest. So now that we have the domain, let's do the range. And that's almost the exact same thing like we did for domain, but instead of x values, we're gonna use y values. Just like what we did with domain, start from least to greatest. So we're gonna start from the bottom and then go up to the top. So using the green highlighter, we can see that this open circle has the y value of -5, which is the lowest. And if we keep going up, we can see the highest point is 2, which is going to be on the closed circle. From here, our lowest value, y value specifically, is -5, and then our highest value, y value, is 2. Notice here, the -5 is on the open circle, so parentheses, and the 2 is on the closed circle bracket. And that's it. That would be your domain and your range. Let's do one more just to clarify. For number 2, this one's gonna look a little different. Also, you can see the line was like perfectly straight, and then we have this a little crooked. Definitely, I drew this one. So, but from here, we see here that we have this parabola, and that's kind of the u that we get from quadratic functions. And what's special about this parabola is that it has the arrows up here specifically. Just to be clear, we have these arrows. And when you think of arrows, you're thinking that it's going on forever. You just keep going, 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 and going. It's going in that direction forever. And that's gonna be very important when we list the domain and range here, so heads up. Starting off with our domain, again, you wanna think about the x values. But the difference here is that although it looks like it's starting at -2, starting from least to greatest, really we can see that the arrow here is saying we're going on forever. And yeah, it's pointing up, but it's slightly going to the left, so we have to assume it's gonna keep going to the left forever. When we think of forever in math, that terminology that we use is infinity. And we're going to include that here. But notice in our case, it's going to the left forever. So it's going in the negative direction. So in this case, we're going to say the domain, it starts at -infinity. And now we want to see where it continues. So going from here, we keep going along the graph, everything is fine until we get to the right arrow. Well, we have to assume that's going to go to the right forever, so that would be positive infinity. So we just write the infinity. We don't have to write the positive sign. If I'm going to use interval notation, I need either the parentheses or the bracket. And which one do I use? Let's think about this. Can you ever have infinity of something? The answer is no. You can have a lot of something, but you can't actually have infinity. You can't obtain that. Because remember, infinity is just a concept of going on forever. It's not a number itself. Because of that, you never include infinity, ever. So we will use parentheses on both of them. And I want to make that a very clear note here. But that's our domain. Let's go with our range now. Again, those are all your y values. Start from lowest to highest. In this case, our lowest point here is at -1. So we'll write the -1 here. And then on either side, if you go left or right, you notice that we have the arrows pointing up. So that means we're going to keep going up forever. So we're going to go up to infinity. And it is in the positive direction, so we'll just write a positive infinity. Now, we are including the -1. I know it kind of doesn't look like it, but I'll write a little close dot there just to kind of help us know. So in here, we're going to have bracket, because we are including, and infinity. Do we ever include infinity? No, never do it. So parentheses. That's it. That's your domain and range. All right. I hope this video helped you out. Hopefully this clears things about what domain and range is, and even a little bit about functions. So with that, if you did like this video, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me a lot. So if you can do that, I would be very appreciative of it. With that being said, I'll see you in the next video.